Hello, and thank you to all our listeners for being here today. I'm so excited to welcome our guest, Laura Cathcart Robbins. Hi, Laura. Laura is the
Hi,
best-selling
Robin.
author of the memoir Stash, My Life in Hiding, and she's also the host of the popular podcast, The Only One in the Room. She's been featured on MSNBC, The Tamron Hall Show, C-SPAN, and Dr. Phil, and her writings appeared in the New York Times, Oprah Daily, Good Housekeeping, the Huffington Post, and others. Her essay, Marriage Made an Actor Out of Me, was featured in the prestigious New York Times Modern Love column, which then became a Modern Love podcast. Laura is also the person who helped me get where I am today with this podcast. We met at the beginning of this year in Santa Barbara at an author's retreat hosted by Zibby Owens, the book influencer. And I was just so impressed by Laura's talents and openness. And so I contacted her after the retreat to find out how she launched her podcast. And she was just so open and nice to me and immediately introduced me to Scott, who is her love and life partner, and Scott produces her show. And I'd had the idea for Step Stories for a long time, and so now Scott produces mine, and hopefully the rest is history. Or herstory,
Or
you're right.
herstory, as it were.
So I'm so glad you're here today, Laura. I really
Well,
appreciate how generous you've been with me. And when I read Stash, which is just an amazing memoir, in fact, Elle magazine named it one of the best memoir of 2023. And this book, I think, just keeps getting more and more traction because it's so well written. And it's dramatic and it's vivid and it's relatable and it's an unusual story too. It's unusual, and at the same time, there's a lot of versatility in it. Anyway, but today I would like to talk about Stash a bit, even though the theme of the book isn't about step families. But I know what happened to you as a stepdaughter might have really been the driving force that influenced a lot of the rest of your life. So, can you tell our listeners about Stash in general and what the story is about?
absolutely. But first, I want to thank you for that really thoughtful, personalized introduction. That was really nice. Like you wove in our experience into it and introduced me in this
Yes.
very nice light. I appreciate it, and
Thank
it's
you.
really good to be on your show. Thank you
Of
for
course.
having me on. Stash My Life in Hiding is a memoir that I wrote uh, in 2021. It came out in 2023. It's about a 10-month period of my life in the year 2008. And during those 10 months, when we start off the book, I'm married and deeply addicted to pills. I have two little kids. I'm the Parent Association president. I've just been asked to join the board at their very elite private school. And by the end of the memoir, we're mediating our divorce. I've gone to treatment and fallen in love with someone else, and been able to the whole thread of the memoir is my kids. The whole purpose really of my life then and now, not the entire purpose, but one of the big purposes of the book was to show what kind of mother I wanted to be and what kind of mother I was, and the strive to keep my connection with my children, the effort
Yes.
to
And
do
that
that.
was so powerful, actually. Well, can we go back to your own childhood and talk about your parents and your family? You had five brothers. Just love to know your history.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't have five brothers for a while because I'm by far the oldest. So I grew up kind of as an only child. My first brother was born when I was 10. So I'd spent, a decade of childhood by myself at that point. But I grew up in Cambridge, Mass. Both my parents got divorced. My dad moved to Nashville to go to med school and then opened his practice in Florida after that. So my parents never lived together after I was 4, but they continued to raise me together. And most of the decisions about my
That's
life were
great.
made by the 2 of them.
Very mature.
It was really
Yeah.
great. It still is great. My dad gets here
Oh,
tomorrow and
that's
my
so
mom lives
nice.
here, and we're all
I
going to go
love
bowling
that.
on
That's
Thursday.
great.
And it's very easy. It's an easy connection being around both of them, which is nice. Um, so while that was happening, somewhere around 5 is when my stepfather came into the picture. And my mother was 20, I don't know. My mother was 24,
Really
I
young.
guess. My
Yeah.
mother was 24. And he was, or 25. And he was, I think he was 21
Oh my
then.
gosh.
He was
I
really
didn't
young.
realize that from the book. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think I did that math
No
until just
wonder he
now.
was so
So
immature. Okay.
I wouldn't have put it in the book. But he's younger than her. And so, yeah, to me, he just
Right.
seemed like
Of
another
course.
adult. It's like they were all in their early
They
20s,
probably
all
seemed
the
like they were
adults in my
40 to
life.
you at that
But,
time.
well, they just, I don't even know the ages of adults. They were
Right.
all just
Right.
grown-ups, right, at that age. And so, yeah, he seemed like another adult to me, but he was quite young. And he entered our life then, and then they got married. And later on had my brother, the first of my 5 brothers. But right away with him, the thing was that who I was authentically just rubbed him the wrong way. We There wasn't a period where we got along really well and then it started to sour. We just never got along right from the gate. And, you know, I don't, this is very muddy for me. Like, I don't remember a lot of this, but because I was also this very social child. So I spent a lot of time outside my house. I loved school then. And I was at school and I was at my friends' houses on the weekends. I would do a lot of sleepovers. But my time in the house with him was very tense. I was anxious while we were in the house together because of the fact that I couldn't be
What
myself.
happened with him? What did he do that made you not feel like you could be yourself?
Yeah, so he was really violent. Most of the violence
Mm-hmm.
was verbal, most of it. So there would be a lot of yelling, um, and the yelling was sometimes directed at me, but often at my mother, because whatever I did was like her fault. I'm
Mm-hmm.
making air quotes there. Like, why didn't you teach her to? Why is like, what kind of
Mm-hmm.
mother are you? Like that kind of thing. And so and then he would also at times be physically violent with her. And that was usually out of my line of sight. It would usually happen after I went to bed, so I would hear it
Mm-hmm.
instead of witnessing it with my eyes. But I would know what was happening from the sounds I would hear
What
outside
did
my
you
bedroom.
do? Did you feel that you were powerless, which you probably, would be natural, or did you want to run in there and help your mother? Like, how do you remember how that felt?
Yeah, I mean, definitely powerless. There were a few times where I ran in there and tried to help and was sent back
Mm.
to my room by both of them. Um, and and I don't want to position it like this was like
Hmm.
a weekly occurrence. It was occasional, but when it would happen, it was
Hmm.
quite traumatic for me. And I think when I was little, I didn't do too much interfering. I just
Hmm.
kind of burrowed in my room. Later on, when I was bigger, physically bigger, I would try to intervene.
Um, well, how did you feel about your mother after she married Kenny and this was going on? Did it change the way you looked at her or felt about her? Were you more protective? Were you angry with her for marrying him? Do you remember?
Yeah, I don't think that I placed any blame on her. I think I felt like
Mm-hmm.
she and I were in it together. That's the way I remember it happening. I don't remember feeling resentful toward her.
Mm-hmm.
I felt sad that, she was getting the worst end
Mm-hmm.
of the stick with this guy, but it didn't, yeah, I didn't feel abandoned in it at all. I felt like she
Mm-hmm.
and I were in it together.
Um, well, so your father had, I think, moved to Florida to open a practice, if I remember correctly, and he got remarried
Yes. Yeah.
eventually. Okay.
Eventually.
Okay.
Eventually. Not when I was little,
So,
though.
did you talk to your father about what was going on? Did you want to go live with your father? What happened there?
No, I never talked to anybody about what was going on,
That's
including my
tough.
mom.
Hmm.
So my dad had
So
no
you had to
idea.
hide that by yourself.
He had no idea. He found out when I was an adult, and he was shocked to find out what was going
Hmm.
on in that house.
Were you afraid to talk to him, or you just were so young that you didn't really have the resource to think, oh, I should call my dad and tell him about this?
That's a good question. I think just instinctually kept it a secret. Like, I was compartmentalizing so much in my after we moved to Cambridge, because we lived in this kind of lower class at the
Hmm.
time Black neighborhood, but I went to an
Hmm.
almost all white school, and which was amazing. Like, I loved my school. I loved going, I think I mentioned that before, and I loved my friends, but culturally I was different. I mean, obviously I looked different than my peers, but I was also culturally different because I was
Hmm.
living in this Black neighborhood, and there were just certain things we said and did that didn't happen at school. And so I learned to compartmentalize things about myself and my culture so that I could blend in at school
Hmm.
seamlessly. And so it didn't feel like a secret then. It just felt like, oh, this isn't something we share here. This is something that I share, that I share at home. Like, I keep
Yeah.
these two worlds separate. And I think that translated to my home life, where this traumatic thing isn't something I share out there. I deal with it here. And that's the
Which
way
is
it's going to
really
be.
interesting because I know, and we'll talk about it, that this translates to what happens to you as an adult and how you dealt with things. But and I really understand this because I myself had stepmothers, and uh that a verbal emotional abuse, it feels like you've been punched, it physically, punch in the gut, punch in the face, whatever, because those words can cut so much and create so much pain, and it's on the inside. Nobody knows on the outside, and they present themselves to the world differently than what's going on at home. So I really, I really get it. So,
Mm.
well, so I know you moved to Berkeley with Kenny and your mom,
Yes.
and I
Yes.
know a lot happened there that, again, affected what happened with the rest of your life. So I know one thing, you came up with a mantra called give him nothing. And that eventually became give them
Yes.
nothing. And so, can you talk about what happened when you moved to Berkeley and how you got to that place of give him nothing?
We moved to Berkeley when I was right before I started high school. And it was going to be my first public school. I'd never been to public school before. There were 3,000 kids in this school, like, as opposed to I think maybe there were 50 kids in the whole school
That's
where I had
huge.
been before. Maybe 60. It was a very small school, like 10 kids per classroom, 12,
Hmm.
and Montessori school. So this was very exciting for me, and I did not do well at that school at all. I was literally lost. I was lost, the first day. I couldn't find any of the classes. Once I did find my classes, it became evident how far behind my
Interesting.
peers I was. I had not learned anything that they had learned to prepare them for high school. I was on a different track
Yeah,
at the Cambridge
because
Montessori school.
probably Montessori has a different philosophy and a way of being than being, in a big public school. And how old were you then?
Yeah. I so 13 and I turned 14
Okay.
the fall after we moved. So it was both those ages. And the other thing is that even at Cambridge Montessori School, I present really well. Like I read a lot. I've always read a lot. I do a lot of writing. The way it looks is that I'm very it looked like I was with my
Yeah.
peers or above them. As far as like achievement wise, like what I was reading and what I was writing, but math and science were just like no one. I
Yeah.
just kind of got through them, and I got workbooks and just didn't really learn math or science. So, and honestly, even the English class, my ninth grade English class was so over my head. I had never taken a
Interesting.
test like that before. I had never read anything actively like
And
that
those were before
before.
the days
I just
of where we are now, where we understand kids learn in different ways. It's not only about reading and writing and
Yes.
arithmetic, the old stuff. And that was how they measured your IQ, your sense of intelligence. And
Hmm.
clearly you're very, very
Yes.
intelligent and have talent. So, you got thrown into a system you just weren't used to. Hmm.
Exactly. Exactly. And I don't think that my stepfather and my mom knew or understood what was happening because I kept it very separate. Eventually I learned when report cards were coming and I would intercept them in the actual mail. This was obviously before
Right.
any
Right.
internet was even thought of. Everything was sent by snail mail then, or you call landline to landline to get a hold of somebody. And that's what actually got me in trouble was my counselor called from the school to my home and told them how much school I'd been missing and that they wanted to
Were
see me.
you afraid to talk to your mother too because you were afraid that it would then go to your stepfather, Kenny, and what would happen? Did you feel you couldn't talk anymore privately to your mother?
No, no, that wasn't it. But I thought about this. Like,
Mm-hmm.
why didn't I tell my mom? Because I trusted her and I trust her. But I think because of everything she was going through, I didn't want to
Mm.
add to her plate with, oh, by the way, your daughter's failing ninth grade. And I really thought I could I could right the boat. Like I could get myself back on track. I had so far in my life, I had really achieved everything I wanted to achieve socially and in
Mm-hmm.
school. Like I had done well, or so I thought. So I thought, well,
Yeah.
this is just a learning curve and I'll get back on track eventually. And I don't
Yep.
need to burden her with
And
this.
also, I'm guessing because you were an only child then, which is like being an oldest daughter in a way, and I was an oldest daughter too, and I thought I was so smart when I was a teenager. I thought I could handle everything, and I did a lot of things myself that I was so dumb. But I took risks and I did things and kept things to myself as well because it just, nobody was really minding the store. And I just believed, oh, I'm independent and can handle it. And I'm guessing maybe you were in that place too.
Absolutely. Yeah, there was definitely this hubris that came along with
Hmm.
being 14, 13, 14, and, just feeling like I'd had enough life experience to basically
Yeah.
fend for myself out there and that I knew
Right.
better than the adults in my life who were trying to take
Right.
care of me.
Well, so what happened when you went to the counselor meeting?
What happened was my stepfather was absolutely enraged, shocked.
Hmm.
They were both really shocked. They had no idea that
Yeah.
any of this had been happening. They didn't have an inkling that of how bad it was, that I had missed
Yeah.
too much school to graduate, not graduate, but to go on
You
to
must
the
have been
next grade.
terrified to have that meeting.
And oh my God,
Yeah.
I felt
Yeah.
crushed sitting in there. And, and then they were offering all these very unattractive alternatives. Like I could go to remedial courses, or I could repeat the ninth grade, or I could go to summer
Mm,
school, again, remedial courses. And
mm,
I didn't want to do any of that. And so I think what happened, I think this is actually in the very beginning of 10th grade. I think that's what it was, because
mm.
that's when I left school, was in the beginning of 10th grade.
You were
And
15?
so like, within those first couple weeks of grade 10. And so I opted to get a job. They were like, if you're not going to be in school, you have to work. And I was
Wow.
15.
And your parents
So
were
yeah,
both academic? No, your father was a doctor, but they were both very academically inclined, right? Yeah.
yeah, they weren't academics. They certainly lived
Yeah.
in academic
Cambridge
towns.
and Berkeley.
Like,
Yeah.
everybody assumed that they were academics because, but the way they were intellectual, and there were the crowd they hung around in was like this very artsy intellectual crowd, where they discussed politics deeply, debated spirited debates about what
Hmm.
was going on in the world, that kind of thing. But my mom, she and my dad met in college, so she had a bachelor's, she
Hmm.
had a college education. So did my stepfather, but neither of them had gone beyond that. Neither of them got
Well,
a
how did your
graduate degree.
father handle you leaving school? Did you have a chance to talk to him on your own, or did your mother just talk to him?
Yeah, no, I definitely talked to him. I don't remember. I know that he was concerned. Like, I don't remember the actual conversation. Um, I think I was quite apologetic about letting him down, and I think that probably created in him an effort, or not an effort, but an urge to make me feel better. Like, because I was so apologetic, like I had failed him. He was trying to let me know that I hadn't, but he was still like, "How did we get here? Like, how did we get to the point where no one knew that it
Did
was
you
this
did
bad?"
your parents ever think about sending you to live with him, going to school in Florida? That was never
No,
something you wanted or nobody discussed.
no,
Okay.
never did that. No, no. I mean, I
Mhm.
visited my dad a lot. Like, I would spend summers with him, but my mom was
Okay.
home. She was an at-home mom, and
Hmm.
my dad was at work all the time. So it wouldn't have been. I don't think it would have been an option unless they
Right.
couldn't
Okay.
take care of me.
So, what happened then? You will tell about what happened to you getting a job so young and where you went from there, please.
Um. So yeah, my first job was at Ortman's ice cream parlor, which was a great job. I loved their Swiss
Oh,
orange
that sounds
chip
like
ice cream.
Swenson's.
I actually looked them up the other day.
Ortman's.
So
Where
good.
was that?
Ortman's. They were. It was on
Okay.
Solano Avenue in Berkeley. They've closed down apparently. I looked them up because I wanted to send somebody there
Interesting.
who was in Berkeley, but it's no longer there. It was actually
Oh.
not somebody. It was Scott. Wanted to, because my bonus daughter, his
Yeah,
daughter, goes to UC Berkeley, and he was there
that's
visiting
funny.
her.
Hmm.
But that was my first job. I scooped ice cream there, and then I worked at the Berkeley sauna, at the front desk, and then like cleaning out the sauna rooms after people use them. Very glamorous. And I had just a bunch of jobs like that for a while until I was probably
Oh,
21, 22. I worked like as a waitress, and I worked at a museum gift shop, and like I did different non-career jobs that took me from one
and were
place
you
to
still living
another.
at home then?
I was until I turned 21, and
Okay.
then I moved to Los Angeles and lived
So
with friends
did
here.
what
Yeah.
happened with your stepfather once you were no longer in school and you had these jobs and you didn't have the pressure of hiding things from school? Did things get better? Did he grow up a bit? Because 21 obviously is pretty young to take on a stepdaughter, and I am not excusing him in any way for what he did, but I'm just wondering, did he mature along with you, um, getting to a different space in your life?
Yeah. I'm so glad you asked that because I don't often get a chance to talk about this part.
Oh,
One, they got divorced. My mom and stepfather got divorced by
okay.
the time I was 15. And then he
Okay.
moved back to Cambridge. So he wasn't
Mm,
in my life in the same way. And somewhere around the age 21, uh, he sent for me and my brother. So I mentioned that they had my brother 10 years later after I was born. So my brother was in his teens, and then I was 20, or no, maybe he was like 11. Yeah, he was like 11 and I was 21. And my stepfather sent for us to come to Cambridge for his parents were doing like a big anniversary. We were going to go to New York. They were having a cruise on the Hudson. And and he and I had spoken on the phone several times at that point. Me always very cautious, kind of
mm-hmm.
waiting for the boom to drop. And him very like curious, how's your life? What's going on? Um, and there were a few other things about growing up with him, that relationship that he and I had where I got on his nerves and nothing I ever did was kind of good enough was factual. But there was also this other relationship that he and I had where he like introduced me to jazz music, which I don't like. But he like really gave me a jazz music education.
Mm,
I know a lot about
interesting.
jazz because of him. He introduced me to these Black authors who I love now and would buy me these books. He was also really
Mm-hmm.
big into astronomy and would give me books on the stars. And I remember him taking me out at night to look at different constellations and showing me where they were. And then we would
Mm,
reference them in my book. So
yeah.
we also had that in addition to the verbal abuse and the trauma that was our relationship. There was that as well, which was nice. It
Confusing.
was confusing because I couldn't just hate him
Yes.
because he was, and so as after he left the house and I became an adult, we could have conversations. We would often reflect back on those times. Do you remember when we saw Orion's belt? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah. And then I bought you that book on blah, blah, blah. And so we would talk about that stuff. And I don't know that I fully trusted him. I didn't see him except for that one boat trip very often. I saw him a
Well,
couple of
that,
times.
go ahead. Sorry.
And
I was just going to
no, go
say,
ahead.
when you first brought up that you went on a boat trip with them and all of that, I thought, wait, what? Why would she continue anything once they were divorced? But I guess I understand about that confusion because, yeah, people aren't, well, there are just evil people, but people are complex and dealing with their own demons. And the older you get, the more you can sort of take a step back and realize that uh, there are good sides to people too. But I don't know. It's also part of, I think, being a victim where they're horrible and then the next thing you know they're so nice and then you get sucked back in and then they're horrible. So I'm really glad that you both matured and the story ended up a little more positive. um
Yeah. Also, he was a really
mm,
great dad to my brother. And I got to witness that. And they had a really good relationship. He traveled with him. They did a lot of stuff together. He was totally different with my
was that
brother than he
hurtful
was
for
with
you
me.
or were you just happy
And
for your brother?
I think I was
Hmm.
happy for my brother. I don't remember being hurt by it. I remember being kind of in awe of it.
Hmm.
Like, wow, look how
Mm.
like nice he can be. And I remember somebody saying this as an adult. Someone was talking about their father, and they said he wasn't a monster, but I brought out the monster in him. And I think that's how it was with my stepfather, because he was a really nice guy, but he just wasn't to me. But in his community, people loved him. In his family, people loved him. And I think that, the relationship that he and I had it was unfortunate. Um, I got married and I didn't invite him to my wedding because I didn't fully trust him.
Mm,
We weren't very close, but we had kind of gotten past the point of just not speaking to each other or pretending. I mean, he always
mm,
wanted to talk to me, honestly, of me not speaking to him, which I didn't do for like 16, 17, and 18. I just didn't
yeah.
talk to him after he moved back. And then eventually I did. Um, but I know
Yeah.
we're kind of getting close to the end, and I do want to say that he died when my youngest was born, and he'll be 26. He died about 6 months after my youngest was born, and um, he had a congestive heart failure. So 2 years earlier, he'd had a heart transplant, and I went to Boston
Mm.
to support my brother, who was there taking care of him. And my stepfather was so happy I was there. He was like just so happy to see me, um, and all the people that were there, people I didn't know, his friends that he had accumulated like throughout his life, because the majority of his life was spent in the Boston area, were so happy to meet me. Oh, you're the daughter. Oh, he
Interesting.
talks about you all the time. And yeah, it was very interesting. And I think that visit allowed me to come back and for his funeral, which is when I went back 2 years later, in a more generous way. Because, I was very clear when I went there, when he was in the hospital the first time, that I was there for my brother. And that was why I was there. My brother's dad was, going through something harrowing. So I was there to support him. And I was able to kind of soften around that, because what I didn't want to do was
Yeah.
carry the resentment with me
Yes.
throughout my whole life. And given that he died, um, it wasn't like he and I were ever going to talk it out, where I
The
was going to
closure.
get what I wanted to get from him.
Yeah.
I don't even know what I wanted from him.
Of course that makes
Um,
sense. You wanted to know how
yeah,
he could have been so cruel to you, but be this completely different person. And I'm glad that you were able to find some closure. I mean, I actually didn't go to either of my stepmother's funerals. Um, and I had to just come to my own closure over time with all of it. And um, some similar things to what you're talking about. And I have my own closure and I have my own guilt for also not going to their funerals, but they weren't there for me and it was different. So I couldn't be there for them in that sense. But I'm
yeah,
glad for you you got that closure.
I did. I mean, a lot of it came after he died, honestly. The more of the
Yeah,
generosity toward
that
him
helps.
came after death. Um, but I was very cautious and protective of myself while he was alive. Uh,
Yeah.
like I said, I just didn't trust him. Um, and then eventually it became unclear what I
Mm.
was protecting myself from, because I don't think he viewed me the same way or would be the same way toward me. Or he wasn't, I guess. He just
Right.
wasn't the
Because you
same way
both
toward me
matured and grew up, it sounds like.
once I became an adult.
I know
Yeah.
which is a shame we're at the end of the interview because I have so many more questions. I wanted to talk to you a bit about your childhood experience and how that has affected you now as a bonus mom to Scott's two girls and Scott's a bonus dad to your two boys. And I know we can't go into it too much, but I guess I can wrap it up by saying for somebody going through something similar to what you went through as a child and now as a parent and bonus mom Do you have any advice you can give to one of our listeners who could help them? Because um, you have made an amazing life for yourself. You've been through so much, and we haven't even talked about what happened and the addiction and how hiding as a child and hiding the schooling affected you later. And we certainly can go longer and talk about that. Or we can wrap it up a little bit and talk about what you did to survive and what somebody else could do to follow in your footsteps.
Yeah, I think, just to talk a little bit about the addiction, and this is the way that I usually put it, is that separation from my authentic self, that thing that I did, that editing of myself when I was a kid because my stepfather would be so angry if I was myself. That was the scaffolding for my addiction years later. It began this pattern of editing myself and kind of, assimilating to
Mm.
whatever my surroundings were, which always meant leaving pieces of my authentic self somewhere else so that I would be, and it wasn't like approval seeking as much as it was, I just wanted to fly under the radar. Like, I actually didn't want anybody's approval. I just didn't want anybody's attention. And being
Of course.
different gets you attention. So I tried to be as much the same as everybody else as I could. So I didn't get any attention because honestly, most attention was unwanted attention for me. And then years later, when I was in the throes of an addiction, the like, not the cure for that, because there isn't a cure for addiction per se, but the way that I got through that was to return to my authentic self and to claim who I was and to look at it and to talk to people about it, instead of keeping it private or secret, which I also just put in air quotes. Because that's how I protected
Mm-hmm.
myself, was to keep things secret. It was too vulnerable to say everything out loud. And so when I got sober almost 17 years ago this week,
Congratulations.
I started to talk about it and freed myself of that compartmentalizing and
Mm.
editing and assimilating. So that's that. And advice wise, even though I'm not keen on advice, but I will say that I hope my experience can help anybody who's going through something similar to tell someone
Mm.
and not keep it to themselves and not carry it by themselves. If I had told people what was happening as it was happening, there might have been a different outcome. I don't know, because it didn't
Mm.
happen. I didn't tell anybody. But that's what I hope people get from my story, that, it is important to protect yourself. But part of that protection is telling a trusted adult
Mm-hmm.
about what's actually going on.
That's so wise, and it makes me think a little bit about how your life trajectory would have been different in some ways if you had and you'd ended up staying in school and gone on to college, and how that would have affected you. So I guess the bad stuff, no. And I think talking about it and getting help is extremely important. But somehow your trajectory made you stronger and stronger and got to you to where you are today. And so that's very admirable, even though I think those of us who go through difficult times would trade them for the outcome. But anyway, I'm so appreciative of you joining me today. I know you're working on some other exciting new projects. I don't know if you want to share anything, but I know one thing I could say to the listeners: please read her book, Stash. Um,
Hmm.
it's it's really a journey for those who are struggling with these kind of secrets and addiction, but also just a wonderful life story. So, anything else you want to talk about that you're doing that's exciting?
Thank you for asking. Yeah, I did just sell a novel to Audible, and that will come
That's
out in
exciting.
2027. So
Yay.
I'm really excited about that, to start the editing
That's
process with a
exciting.
fiction editor for the first time. Yeah. And I have a couple of, I have two more novels, one that I just finished and
That's
one that I'm
incredible.
working on now. So I'm going to try to keep the pipeline full. I'm trying to, keep up with
I
Zibby.
know she's incredible. Oh my gosh. She has so much
Oh my
energy.
goodness. Yeah. I'll never catch up, but I'm trying to, at least not get
I
too
mean,
far
I'm
behind her.
watching her the last couple of years just blossom, and I'm seeing that with you too. It's incredible. And I do think, by the way, that's just one more big positive about your the lessons of your life. I mean, you dropped out of school, and I'm not saying people should drop out of school, but look at what you're doing. Look at how you, through perseverance, through learning, through just this incredible desire, have achieved. And you don't have a college degree. You didn't, go through all that. So I think that's a good message too to people out there who think, "Oh, I can't do this. I can't get there." Yes, you can. If you've got it in you and you want it, you can get there. So,
I appreciate that. I think that everyone needs an education.
yeah.
Mine is not formal, but I definitely educated myself, and
Mm,
school isn't for everybody. So there's that, but I do think everyone needs an education. So
right.
however one educates themselves, um, to get out there, and then you're
That's
right,
right.
anything is
Yeah.
possible.
Thank you, Laura, so much. It was great to talk with you
Thank you,
and hope
Robin.
to see you again soon. And please listen to her podcast as well, The Only One in the Room. It's amazing.